Is anyone who protests ICE a domestic terrorist?
And it's illegal. Let's remember, what she did was a crime.
But do you have evidence that she's a domestic terrorist?
Let me finish this. So that small population out there that's already half nuts, they hear this rhetoric that ICE is racist and they're Nazis and they're disappearing people. That empowers them to do stupid things.
But it's one thing to have the FBI be
They're complicit why we're in the position we are today. And it's not over. There will be more bloodshed.
The media has been putting out a lot of kind of altered information, partial information, key details missing in a lot of their reports, pushing a bit of a false narrative over some of the things that have been happening there in Minneapolis. So Tom Homan, the Border Czar for the Trump administration, he went on the Sunday shows this weekend. So here he is on Meet the Press trying to give Kristen Welker a little bit of a dose of reality.
Joining me now is White House Border Czar Tom Homan, who was the acting ICE director in President Trump's first term. Mr. Homan, welcome to Meet the Press.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So the world has now seen that video, the perspective from the officer. I wonder, Mr. Homan, what do you see in that video? Look,
it's tragic. And I've said from March, if the hateful rhetoric doesn't decline, there's going to be bloodshed. I've seen this movie before. And unfortunately, I was right. And there's been a lot of bloodshed.
He was right.
But look, you got to put yourself in the mind of the officer, right? You're in a city where there's protests, interference, impediment, like these two ladies were doing before this incident occurred. You're in a city where law enforcement response is sporadic at best. You got threats up over 1,300%. Actual assault on ICE officers. You got a woman behind the wheel of a 4,000-pound vehicle, revving her engine, going towards you. I truly believe this officer, in his mind, thought his life was in danger, which allows him to use lethal force. Now, I'll say this, let the investigation play out, right? There's a lot of video we probably haven't seen that the FBI has that we don't. Where's the forensics and the ballistics? That hasn't been unleashed. How about the officer's statements, his own statements? So we need to let this play out, but while we're doing that, we got to stop the hateful rhetoric. Saying this officer's a murderer is dangerous. It's just ridiculous. It's just going to infuriate people more, which means there's going to be more incidents like this because the hateful rhetoric is not only continuing, now it's tripled down and doubled down.
Mr. Homan, let me ask you, because you have yet again here today said you want the investigation to play out. This is something you said in the immediate aftermath of this shooting. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem called this a, quote, act of domestic terrorism. President Trump said Renee Good, quote, violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer. How can the public trust the investigation when there has already been this judgment passed down by the president and some of his top officials?
Look, we've all seen the video. And again, no one knows what's in that officer's mind. You don't, I don't, no one does. But we'll let the investigation play out. But bottom line is, why are we even there? Why are we in Minneapolis? Because it's a sanctuary city, a sanctuary state. ICE is out looking for dangerous people. It's not okay to impede and interfere with an officer.
They want to keep them. They want to keep them in their neighborhoods.
If a citizen impeded and interfered with a U.S. Marshal arresting a fugitive? No. Is it okay if they stood in before the FBI when they're going to arrest a terrorist? No. These are targeted enforcement operations. They're arresting bad people. And it's illegal. Let's remember, what she did was a crime. It's illegal to interfere and impede with ICE law enforcement officers. That's why we're there.
And yet what Minneapolis officials are arguing is that the way that ICE officials are carrying out their duties may be adding to the tension. Secretary Noem labeled this an act of domestic terrorism. What's the evidence for that allegation, Mr. Homan?
Bottom line is, again, why we're in Minneapolis. If they didn't have the sanctuary policies they had.
But do you have evidence that she's a domestic terrorist?
Let me finish this, because this is important.
Yes, they do, because her actions fit the description.
Less officers in the community if we were in the jail. Bottom line, we are forced into the community because the governor of that state and the mayor support sanctuary cities. If you want less officers in the street, then let us into jail.
And I'm going to talk to Mayor Fry about the sanctuary city policies there, but I want to stay on this question. which is about the way in which the woman who was shot and killed is being labeled as a domestic terrorist. Just to be clear, is anyone who protests ICE a domestic terrorist in
Nobody
the eyes
said
of the
that.
administration?
I can't
She
say
wasn't
that. You know, it's a
protesting.
case-by-case basis,
She was
but
way beyond
if you look up the
protesting.
definition of terrorism, is there violence? Is there threat of violence based on an ideology that wants to change the way the government does what we do?
Stop
Look up the
defining that
definition
as
of terrorism.
protesting.
Was
Look at-
Secretary Noem correct to label her a domestic
It
terrorist?
seems
Mr.
that she
Homan?
was,
Look,
yes.
We don't know what, I don't know what Secretary Noem knows and what I know. I can tell you is what they did is illegal. And if you look up this definition of terrorism, it certainly could fall within that definition. If you look at the definition
But
of
you don't
terrorism.
have evidence.
Pardon me?
You don't have evidence that she's a domestic terrorist.
I don't know what Secretary has that I don't. I'm not going to judge what the Secretary says, but if you look up the definition of terrorism, it certainly can fall within that. But I think we all got to agree there was no reason for this lady to do what she did. There's no reason to be there. If you want to protest, protest, but don't actively impede and interfere, and certainly don't drive a 4,000-pound vehicle toward an officer.
They're too dishonest and disingenuous. Look at the mayor and the governor. How can you trust people like that to be able to give an honest opinion?
The environment right now with the threats against ICE officers have been shot at. They've had Molotov cocktails thrown on them. They've been doxxed. They've been, again, assaults up over 1,300%. Threats alone up 8,000%. And you're in a situation
Incredible.
with this lady where it's impeding and interfering already. He's in a dangerous situation. And again, I want people to understand this. Put yourself in his shoes. Put yourself in his shoes where he's in that environment. Assaults against ICE officers all-time high. You have a vehicle that is pointed toward him and accelerates toward him. He has a second to make that decision. And I truly believe, and again, this will come out in the investigation, that in his mind, he feared for his life and he took appropriate action. And that, and according to federal law, that's a legitimate response. And even according to Minnesota law, Minnesota state law even talks about a vehicle coming towards you and your right to defend yourself. This officer, I think in his mind, did
Stop
the right
interfering.
thing to save his own life and life of others.
You are talking about the perspective of ICE officers. I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about the perspective of some of the people all across this country. There have been 9 ICE-involved shootings since September. By one count, ICE has detained 170 U.S. citizens. People across this country, as you have seen, Mr. Homan, are out protesting ICE's actions. How do you justify an enforcement strategy that is making so many people feel less safe?
Because of the false
Because we have a
reports,
huge
because
problem.
members of Congress who want to compare ICE to terrorists.
No, but
Not-
these are protesters
listen.
saying this. But these are protesters saying this. I'm asking you to respond to the protesters who say they feel less safe, who say they're concerned for their neighbor.
Because they're looking at media reports and saying ICE are terrorists, they're racist, they're the Nazis. They're listening to people saying that, using the term disappearing people. ICE is doing the same thing they've done for 40
People
years.
like the mayor.
ICE is an enforced law. If you don't like what ICE is doing, go protest Congress. ICE is enforcing laws enacted by Congress. For any member of Congress to say that ICE is a Nazi or a racist or secret police, really? Because they're enforcing laws you enacted. If they're a racist for enforcing law, what's that make you? You wrote the law. And let's remember the true data. The true data, 70%, approximately, it goes from anywhere from 60 to 70, of people they're arresting are criminals. Bottom line. But some of the media says, no, that's not true, because they think DUI isn't a crime. DUI kills 13,000 people a year. I think it's a huge public safety issue. It's because of the rhetoric, the hateful rhetoric. So that small population out there that's already half nuts, they hear this rhetoric that ICE is racist and they're Nazis and they're disappearing people. That empowers them to do stupid
They
things.
don't need much
Let me ask you,
influence.
because we're almost out of time, I do want to give you the opportunity to respond to some lingering questions about you. As you know, in an undercover operation in 2024, the FBI recorded you accepting a bag which was determined to contain $50,000 from agents posing as business executives who said you indicated you could help win government contracts in the second Trump administration. I want to stress there was an investigation. It was closed last year. The Justice Department said it found, quote, no credible evidence of
What
any
does that
criminal
have to do with
wrongdoing.
the
I do
conversation
want to give you an
about ICE?
opportunity to respond, though, Mr. Homan. Where is that $50,000? Did you keep it or did you return it?
I didn't take $50,000 from anybody, and that's a question for the FBI. I'm not going to give this story any more air. Bottom line, I did nothing illegal. I did nothing, and the FBI and DOJ reviewed this. No credible evidence I did anything because I didn't do anything illegal.
But was there $50,000 in the bag, and did you return it?
I'm not giving the story any more air.
He said he didn't take any money.
Attack on my
and the
integrity
FBI looked at it and cleared
professionalism.
him.
I'm not addressing it.
But
that's a question of the FBI.
Joe
Can
Biden's
you
FBI.
address, given that it's been recorded, did you keep the money? Did you return the money?
I did not keep any. $50,000 is ridiculous. The FBI has been clearing this, and it irritates me. This story keeps going on and on and on, even though I've been found to do nothing inappropriate. So I'm not going to ask any more of these questions.
But just, did you return the money?
I didn't have any money to return.
Okay.
I didn't take the $50,000.
He already told you that he didn't take it.
Let me ask you, you're saying you did nothing unlawful. Would you be comfortable with the FBI releasing the recordings of this incident?
That's a decision of the FBI.
So she kind of changed it up there at the end, trying to ask Tom Homan about an alleged bribe that he received to, in exchange for getting people government contracts. Now, I don't know much about this case, but apparently from what he's saying, he's already been cleared by the FBI. So I don't know why she wanted to go there, but we'll see if anything more comes out about that. Tom Homan seems to be an honest guy and an honorable guy, but don't know much about that case. But I don't understand why she felt like she needed to bring that up. But Tom Homan was also on Fox News talking about the Minnesota shooting.
We can see what's happening throughout the country. I think it's a funded, organized attack against ICE officers. And what really irritates me is the left wants to play this game that ICE, they're not law enforcement officers. They are federal law enforcement officers. Impeding them and interfering them is a crime. But it seems like they want to, they normalize, the media is normalizing interference with ICE. It is a crime to impede ICE officers. Bill Mnuchin just put out a list of 18 of the worst of the worst in Minneapolis, many of them child sex crimes, child rape, child sodomy. These are the people we're looking for. And for anybody to interfere in that,
those are their neighbors.
Unconscionable. We need to enforce the law and arrest these bad guys. We've already arrested over 1,000 people in that state, and we're going to continue to do exactly what Congress has allowed us to do and what the law allows us to do.
Lack of collaboration, a one-time decision that's specific to this case, or are we watching a new, broader policy rollout here?
No, look, that state's a sanctuary state, it's a sanctuary city. They don't work with us. And that's one of the problems here. And it's one of the reasons we're in the position we're in that city, because law enforcement response has been sporadic at best. This is sanctuary city. Let's remember, why are we in that city right now? Because they're a sanctuary city that purposely releases public safety threats back into the public. I just mentioned about all these cases that child sex crime, child sodomy, child rape, that they release back into the community. These are people we have to go look for. And who set the stage for all this? The last 4 years of an open border, millions of people released in this country without vetting, a lot of criminals, a lot of national security threats. That's why we're there. Let's not forget who set the stage on this. So all these people on the Democratic side and all these liberal people want to scream and yell about our law enforcement activities. They didn't say a word when there's an open border. They didn't say a word when 500,000 children were smuggled in this country, lost track of 300,000, and they weren't even looking for them. President Trump and this administration found 129,000 of them. They were silent then. They were complicit on millions of people being released in this country, many of them criminals. Didn't say a word. Now all of a sudden, because we're trying to fix 4 years of an open border, now all of a sudden they got an opinion.
There are already 2,000 or so federal agents in Minneapolis for this massive crackdown that's tied in part to this ongoing probe of alleged Somali fraud. Fox is told that about 1,000 more Border Patrol agents are going to be heading there to assist, basically free up HSI officers. There's also this growing network of local residents who are tracking ICE movements and warning people about them. And schools in the area are being given the option of remote learning for the next month because of how hot the environment is getting. Are you concerned about what we're heading toward? And what do you say to those officials like Mayor Frey, who's accused the administration of just looking for an excuse to invoke the Insurrection Act?
It's ridiculous. Bottom line is they don't have to shut schools down. They can't give me one example where ICE has walked into an elementary school or a church or hospital. It's ridiculous. And all this false narrative that they're pushing, it's just going to double down on hate against ICE. For instance, calling it a murder, the mayor calling it a murder. The hateful rhetoric has caused a lot of this violence. I said way back in March, if the hateful rhetoric doesn't decrease, there will be bloodshed. Unfortunately, I was right.
That's right.
And it's not over. There will be more
Absolutely right.
bloodshed unless we decrease the hateful rhetoric. To compare this officer to a murder, are you kidding me? Threats against ICE officer, actual attacks are up 1,300%. A lot of it's based on the hateful rhetoric from people who don't understand what's going on and don't want to face the facts. If you want a safe city, if you want ICE out of your city, then stop being a sanctuary city. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. More agents in your
That's
jail
exactly right.
means less agents in your
Sanctuary
community.
for criminals.
But don't mistake anything. We're going to get this job done.
Yeah, if they close the schools, where are these kids going to learn how to be protesters there in Minnesota? Seems like they teach them at a young age there. You always hear them talking about arresting our neighbors. You're arresting my neighbor. If your neighbor is a child rapist, wouldn't you want your neighbor to be arrested? They seem to leave out a lot of these minor details. You know, he's wanted for murder, or he's a child rapist, or something like that. Let's get him out of your neighborhood. And then to the governor and the mayor, tell your people to stand down. Tell them to stop confronting ICE. Tell them to stop impeding and interfering with ICE. I never hear that from them, and that would solve a lot of these issues. Instead of telling them to show up and protest, tell them to stay home and stay out of the way. Another great point that Tom Homan raised was the missing children who were smuggled across the open border of Joe Biden. Over 300,000 children, I think, were smuggled into the United States, and they've only found not even half. So where's the outrage and the passion about finding those children? Where's Oprah? Remember, Oprah was so passionate about finding the kidnapped girls in Africa from her school. Where is her money and her involvement in finding these missing children here in the United States? Seems like everybody could be passionate about that, but there was no outrage about all these missing children. So as far as all the liberals and the protesters, and even the media, there's too many holes in your stories to really believe that you're all about compassion, peace, and love. There's no compassion for the victims of the illegal aliens. There's no compassion for law enforcement, and there's no respect for law enforcement. So what you're saying really doesn't stand up. You know, it doesn't hold water. So a lot of rhetoric, a lot of hatred coming from the left, and always claiming to be people of peace and love. But when you look at their actions, it doesn't represent that at all. So good interviews here with Tom Homan, trying to clear up some misinformation on the Sunday shows. And he had a lot to say, and he was pretty passionate about what he said, I thought. What do you guys think of Tom Homan and the job he's doing as Border Czar? And what did you think of his interviews on the Sunday shows? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video.